Hi, everybody. Adrian Fontes here. Did you know that the Democrats of Greater Tucson has a website, thedgt.org, and if you subscribe, it's only 20 bucks. You can support this great weekly communication where folks get together. Sometimes there's candidates, sometimes folks like me pop on to help understand what's going on in the world. The Democrats of Greater Tucson, thedgt.org. Join up today.
Oh, hi, my name is Jim Sinex. I'm a Tucsonan since I was 3 years old in 1960. So that makes me, what, 67? I grew up on the southwest side of the city of Tucson near Cardinal and Drexel. I'm a product of TUSD, White Elementary, Wakefield, Pister, Cholla High School, product of the University of Arizona with a Bachelor of Science degree in ecology and evolutionary biology. From that, I became a school teacher and I taught science for about 20 years at Tucson High. And that led me into union activities, and that led me into working with the Democratic Party in 2004. It led me to working with my labor union, the National Education Association, for a time, and that led me into retiring into COVID. So here I am from there.
Okay, well, welcome. We're glad to have you. So, why are you running?
Well, I'm running because I want to see a better Tucson. I think that's a normal answer from anybody who's doing this kind of thing. Um, there's an open seat. Steve Kasajic retired. Karen Ulick took the position for the interim, and so we have a wide open seat. The thing that brings me to this is my interest in elections, my interest in science, my understanding, my belief that I don't think Tucson is doing enough to plan for the future in terms of global warming. And frankly, I see too many emotional arguments being made and called rational. And so I'd like to bring a little more rational, more of a rational viewpoint to the discussion.
Well, if elected, you've got an interesting budget challenge. So, how are you thinking you would handle the budget challenge for the city of Tucson?
Well, in terms of the budget, I mean, the problem I think with the budget is that it's pretty complex. Now, what I've read of the budget is that there's very little. Well, there's a minority of it that can actually be acted upon. About a third, I think it's about a third of the budget is taken up by police and fire, and we can't really change that. Um, what we have to do is be more fiscally conservative, and I don't mean that in the way that Republicans use the term. I see the Republican Party more as taxophobic. What I think is we got to watch our dollars. It's unfortunate, I think, that we come to a problem with the budget right now when we just ask everybody, we just ask the city of Tucson to pass a bond so that we could fund police and fire. Well, we should only be doing special elections if we're trying to add on to the budget. So that tells me that there's something going on there. That's honestly that's the best I can tell you about the budget right now. I mean, I've read the budget from what I can see online, but there's a whole bunch of nuances that are unavailable to the public that is a little more hard to manage.
Okay. And you mentioned that, what was it, 2024, was it? Or you were active with Democratic policies. And what was that for?
When I was working with the Democratic Party in 2004, I was working for the Kerry campaign, or I was working with the Pima County Democratic Party with the Kerry campaign.
Okay. And what did you like about that work?
Well, what I found, so here's what we did. We had clusters, so about 9 or 10 precincts, and so a cluster captain, which I was one, would go to each precinct and talk to the precinct committeemen and such like that, and try to get information out through the Democratic Party. When it came to the election in November, we put 3 clusters together, and we called that a super cluster, and I was the super cluster captain for this area, so I was in charge of 29 precincts. It was interesting. I crunched the numbers later, and what we were able to do is we were able to get 5,000 votes in those 29 precincts that Al Gore never had. So part of that due to growth, but part of that is just because we were doing something that I thought worked. Then I found that 2 years later, the Democratic Party abandoned this idea that they were using. What we were doing was we were actually going to polling places, and we were pulling the sheets, and then we were bringing them back to our area, and we were calling everybody who hadn't voted before, and we were able to get voting up that way. But we don't do that anymore.
Okay. And back to the budget for a question.
So I saw a lot of promise. Pima County is well, let's take 2024. Presidentially, it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to, but Pima County did exactly what it was supposed to do. We came through with just about 60% of the vote for Kamala Harris. That's as good as any county can do, probably. And so my belief is, in terms of Pima County, Greater Tucson, is that we should hold our heads high. We should be proud of what we did. We came through. We did our Donald Trump in Washington is not our fault. We showed up. We did our job. We opened Arizona so that Maricopa could walk in, and we could have gone blue again, but didn't work out that way.
Okay. Well, should a bus ride be free or not?
Well, I've got an article in paper that details it in more detail, but my viewpoint basically comes back to one thing in terms of city government, and that is community. So does a free bus ride enhance our community? I believe that it does. Now, that doesn't mean we can afford it, but I've been in a position. I wrote in my article in the Star. I've been in a position where I had to deal. I was a low income out of high school. I had a fairly low income, and my bicycle got stolen, and it took years to recover from that. And I had to go to work and such using the bus, right? I think the bus is a vital resource. I've heard bad things about buses, about how dirty they are and how smelly they are and how dangerous they are. Well, what I did is I went and got on a bus. And then I got on several buses. And then I started talking to people on the buses. And then I started talking to like police officers at the Ronstadt Center and such. What I found is that the buses were better than when I was riding them in my 20s. So the buses function well. What I understand is that the amount of money that comes from fares is not a substantial number. So I would like to see them stay free and fair, as long as we can. Now, as I say, it comes down to the the uh, the budget and whether we can afford it.
Have you had a chance to think much about city and county government working together more?
Well, as much as we can, I think that we should. I mean, basically, if you look at a map of the city of Tucson or of Pima County, and you start to look where the people are, we are basically all in one area. So we should. I think that we should work together in any way that we can. Our libraries are run by Pima County, and so. As an example, I think we should work with the city, with the county as much as we can. Doesn't mean that we should be. It doesn't mean that we should allow them to walk all over us. I think we've got a problem with the RTA, for example, in that 10 years ago we made a deal with them that a lot of the resources were going to go outside of the city, and then they were going to come to the center of the city, to the city. And what's happened is, if you just go just a few blocks from my house here in the Palo Verde neighborhood, you'll find that Grant is torn up and there's nothing being done.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a real problem. I've got some issues with the way that's working and the way that we're building Tucson.
Maybe joint law enforcement, maybe joint park and rec, fire prevention services.
It depends on what Tucson is going to get out of it. There are things that the city of Tucson can do as a city that can't be done outside of the city. So in a sense, we have a stronger hand. If it's beneficial to the city of Tucson, I think it's something that we should do. That we should do. If we're if it's something that is not beneficial, but it's better for the community as a whole, then maybe we should do it as well. But I think we should just be very careful about this.
Okay. Tracy Vancouver has a question for you.
Okay.
I do. My question regards something I read in your, I guess, the introductory piece that you offered about yourself, where you said that it's a lifelong practice for you of thinking in terms of populations. That seemed like kind of a philosophical underpinning that might merit a little elaboration.
I study ecology and evolutionary biology, so that kind of teaches you to think in terms of populations. And from that, that's one of the reasons I got interested in elections, because elections are how populations make decisions in our democracy. And so those numbers are extremely important. We tend to think of ourselves as individuals, but then we tend to think about outside of our individuality. We tend to think of people as a group, and this is true. But populations move a little different than individuals, and so in a democracy, for example, we have to make sure that we have things open and fair to everybody, including people who disagree with us. And so that's basically what I was talking about in those terms.
You were talking about fairness.
Well, I think the way to work as a population is through fairness. I mean, you can look at how you can work with a population and in an unfair manner, and you just watch the nightly news that way. We've got people who won an election, and they don't give a hoot about the people who voted against them. That's an unfair way to do it. Now, both can work. We've seen in our history that totalitarianism, for example, can work, but it doesn't work for long. Democracy is a fairly fragile thing, and so we have to be very careful about it.
I guess I was looking for your conception of what a population is, but it
Okay.
sounds like that's not relevant to your
No.
equation.
Okay, so you know, you have a population within your family, you have a population within your neighborhood. You know, in a sense, Tucson is made up of a bunch of subpopulations, but Tucson itself is a population as well, right?
Right.
And so looking at Tucson in terms of subpopulations actually allows one to better understand the city of Tucson. Example being, I think that the governance on the south and west side is very different than the governance on the east side. For example, let's just go with the wards. Ward 1 and Ward 5 are very different in their makeup as a population than the populations of wards 2 and 4. I think we'd all agree with that. And so looking at those in terms of populations, one of the reasons that I believe in single district elections is because I think our wards are very different from each other. And they do support different populations. Ward 6, for example, is an anomaly here because we actually have two large subpopulations, one of which is can be categorized on the west side, University to the west, and the other one can be seen University to the right, to the east. And a Ward 6 candidate needs to be able to address both. And what we found in Ward 6 is when you're unable to do that, then we can have a real problem. One example is that I had worked up for y'all was if you recall 1997. Okay, 1997, the election there pitted. Let's see, who is it? It's Hughes versus Ronstadt. Okay, now Fred Ronstadt is a Republican. He's a person who didn't win his ward, and he also did not win his precinct. And yet, because he was able to gather votes from 2 and 4, that other population, he was actually able to take Ward 6. The Ward 6 voted against him. See, so these are three separate populations. There are two populations who actually, their will was more important than our will. And so that's one of the dangers, I think, with our election system the way it is that we tend to put ourselves in a position where we don't get to make a decision on our representation for our population. In terms of 1997, a different population, a different subpopulation decided who our representation would be, and thus we were saddled with Fred Ronstadt for 8 years.
It's a helpful example. Thank you.
Well, you should also note here too. There's an interesting number in 1997 in Ward 6. Fred Ronstadt won by about 990 votes. Okay, in Ward 6, 2,087 voted blank, meaning they protested. They didn't care who won in Ward 6. People in Ward 6 who left the Ward 6 position blank. Okay, that in the end, so the 28,000 for Ronstadt, 27 for Hughes, but 17,000 people in the city of Tucson voted blank. That comes from not caring for your population. Now Hughes won Ward 6, and in my view, she should have been seated.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, Andrea?
Hi. I was, Jim, I was having trouble hearing the end of your sentences. What, sorry to ask you to repeat yourself.
No
So
problem.
how is it that we had somebody collecting signatures in other wards for a Ward 6 election? And you said 17,000 people in the race between Ronstadt and Hughes was significant, and why is that again?
They voted blank.
They voted blank, you said?
Yeah, they didn't put a choice. It's called an undervote.
Hmm,
They nobody.
okay.
17,000 people voted for nobody.
Mhm.
Now that's a significant protest vote. Now, to be fair, in this one they had about 10 or 12 propositions, so there may have been people who came in to vote on propositions, but they didn't vote for our council elections. Our council elections in the wards 3, 5, and 6 are consistently below 30% of the vote.
Well, is that better or worse than the rest of the city?
Well, what happens in when the mayor runs with wards 1, 2, and 4, the turnout is about doubled. And in the late 1960s and 1970s, we used to come in at about 60 to 70%. The city of Tucson used to get awards for our voter turnout, but we no longer do that. This is my web page. Okay. And so what you see down here is there's a ward map, there's a donate button, but it's not working yet. Down here, ideas first. Now, one of the reasons I talk about ideas first is I believe that we hold elections in the city of Tucson with a low information base, meaning that most voters, if they're to make a decision to vote, are making a decision from their mailbox. Okay, and on those, what's coming in from the mailbox are basically bullet points, and I think that's a real problem. So what I title my campaign as is an ideas first. We're looking for a more democratic Tucson or a more democratic party. Okay, on this, can you see my arrow here? So there's my announcement right here. Here's these right here are all articles that I wrote for the Arizona Daily Star, and you can download them all. Okay, right here is a case against at-large elections. Okay, and so you hit download, and up that comes. This is a piece of information that I don't think a lot of you have, and that I think you ought to know. Okay, so you can see up here, it starts in 1950. All of these whites here should be blue. There's 1950. We used to elect every year, okay, up to 1962. This was the point in our history that was called the Great White Migration. Okay, that's when post-World War II, a lot of people, like my family, came to Tucson. In 1950, there were 50,000 people here in Tucson. 69% spoke a language other than English, according to the Census Bureau. And then we switched to the 2-year sections, and here we are. Now you can see here, there's, I don't know, I hope you can read this. Right here where my arrow is, right here, it gets big too, is a ward loss. What that means is that you lost within the ward, but you won at large. Okay? Down below it, you can see unopposed. That means you ran unopposed. Nobody sought to participate in the election. I think both of those are problems. But look at all the ward losses here, especially here in Ward 5. Now, Ward 2, we would expect that. Okay, if you go down there, there's an awful lot of Democrats who won, though they lost the ward. That's on the east side. But to be fair, back here in the 1950s, Ward 2 was voting out of Sam Hughes Elementary School. Okay, so As you come down, now look at Ward 6 or Ward 5 here. All of these down here where Republicans are taking the seat, but they're losing at ward level. Okay. Now, here's the warning that I want to put forward. Okay. It goes right here. Okay. So if you can see this, let me see if I can make there. This ward loss right here, this is Fred Ronstadt. Never won the ward. Now, in a ward loss here, he won but lost the ward. Part of that reasoning is because the other two wards were running unopposed. So the population within the electorate was low. That's why Fred Ronstadt won. Then they came in the next session. Fred Ronstadt won, and then Dunbar won over here in Ward 3. Now, my concern is I think that what we're shaping up to have right now is very much like this system right here. We've got a Ward 5 that is running unopposed after the primary. Their election is over, so their ward is going to show up in their population is going to show up in a much reduced number. Okay, and that can lead to, just consider if this were to happen. Now over here, this is Bob Walk up here, who's the mayor at that time. We don't have that issue right here, but it's very possible right down here in 2025, we could actually lose 2 of our wards. It could happen basically with a problem of low voter turnout. But I also want to point out to this yellow area right up here. This yellow area right up here is the recall that occurred in 1977. Now, the recall was based on one thing and one thing only. The city of Tucson made a fiscally conservative choice. And that choice was that people in the foothills have a higher elevation. Gravity works. So what you have to do is you have to counteract gravity with a pump station. You got to pump that water up there so that it can flow downhill again. And the idea from the city of Tucson was that the foothills should be paying for their pump house. Thus, their water bills should be higher. Now, what is our city mayor and council doing right now in terms of water in unincorporated areas? We have a situation where it's very possible that that Republicans are going to run with a lot of cash inflow from outside of the city. And so I'm a little worried about this election right down here, what we're running right here. This little piece is just one of the examples of position papers that I'm putting forward. I don't want to put this as a bullet point. I want you to see actually how I'm thinking. The problem I see right here, example Ward 6. Okay, we're going to get into a little bit of mathematics, but I think it's a simple one. Ward 6 has roughly 6,000 voters. Okay, thus each vote represents 1 in 6,000, 1 over 6,000. Okay, now that varies with turnout. If turnout is half, then it's 1 in 30,000. The Ward 6 primary does not require a majority outcome. That's one of the things I would like to change. I would like our election system to actually require a majority. Okay, the reason is there are 4 of us running, and all things being equal, one of us can win this thing with as little as 25% plus 1. Now that's not a democratic outcome. More people would be voting against that candidate than voting for it. So requiring a majority, I think, is very important. Now, Tucson also has about 300,000 voters. Thus, each in the general election, your vote is about 1/300,000, disregarding turnout. Okay, therefore, look at this line right here. Therefore, in Ward 6, a Ward 6 vote is 5 times weaker in choosing the actual representative for the ward. So, if you know the candidates for Ward 6, I think you'll find that all of us are very personable. Honestly, I think I think we'd be well served, any of the 4 of us. Now, I think my candidacy is a little better, but that's not up to me. Point is, we would be well served by any of the 4 of us. But when it comes to the general election, the people of Ward 6 are going to have a vote that is 5 times weaker when it comes down to choosing the difference between a Democrat and a Republican sitting in that Ward 6 office. And I don't think that's a very democratic way of doing things. And I think this chart here gives you a good example of how this has worked historically.
Right. Okay, we got Susie Anderson has her hand up.
Yeah, let's see if I can get back here. Just a second. Okay, now stop share.
Okay,
Yep.
Jim.
You
Good.
did it.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
you're there. What I was wondering, we have a homeless population and we don't seem to be able to find any good solutions. We don't want them in the washes. We don't want them in our neighborhoods. We don't want to fund housing for them. Do you have some good ideas about how we handle our homeless population, which is just going to keep growing?
Well, I have one good one. Good idea. But first of all, there are 2 things. One is that the homeless problem is it goes back before the Bible was ever written. So it's been around for a long time. We're not going to solve it. So let's get that one under our belts. There's also a difference between the homeless and the houseless. There are people who have lost their domicile and they're trying to get back in. That's a different problem than someone who is living on the street by choice or they're unable to function in society. Okay? So I think those take two different approaches. Now, I may be the only candidate running in this election who's ever been homeless. Now, mine came when I was in my 20s. I was living with somebody who had 2 kids. We were struggling, making things work. Once we got to the point where we were financially stable, she was done. I was out on the street. She couldn't be out on the street. She has kids. Anyway, I was out on the street. I was lucky though. I had a car, I had a tent, and I had a job. So I was able to put myself back on my feet within the month. But I can tell you that month is something that can be, it works against your own self-worth. And therein lies a problem. Someone who is in my position, which I would claim to be more houseless, may need a different solution. They may need a place to stay for a month. They may need help getting a job. That's something I think that we can work with. The other problem, though, of people who are living on the street, who decide to live on the street, one of the biggest problems is what they do at night. Let's be fair. If you've got a property, I've got a property. I don't want somebody coming over my wall and sleeping in my backyard. I don't think that's safe. I don't think that's, I understand why they would be doing that, but I don't think that is safe. There is something we can do about that. Now, it requires money. Can we afford it? But one of the things that we have in this country is a trade surplus. Well, deficit. We have a deficit. But out of that, we get a surplus of shipping containers. Shipping containers are not very expensive, considering a 40-foot shipping container cut into fours with 4 doors could be a place that we could set up that a person could come to and they could have a safe place to spend the night. A shipping container is also mobile, so it can be moved around. I've seen other cities who have been able to do such a thing. I think it was Seattle that I saw a report where they were setting up areas near the freeway, which was just a large area of tents where people could come in and they could spend the night in that tent. So I think we can do that kind of a thing, but it's a hard nut to crack. It's a hard nut to crack, and it's going to get worse because, let's be fair, help from the state, help from the federal government is going to diminish. That's just over the next 4 years. That's just what we have to get used to. Our planning for growth for growth's sake, is not going to work for us. So we've got to find inexpensive ways of helping to solve these problems. That's going to help the problem. It's not going to solve the problem. But there are a lot of organizations that are out there working with the homeless right now who would probably want to weigh in on this as well. So let's get together and let's have a conversation about how to actually find a solution to the problem. That's a start. What that solution is, gosh, I wish it were a simple question. That's a hard one.
Yeah. Okay, Lillian Fox has her hand up. Lillian?
Yeah, I've known Jim off and on for many years. You're not going to find anybody smarter than him. Are your charts on your website, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
We went to it on my website, and you can pop that up.
Okay, I'll do
on
that.
On my website, you're not going to see a lot of bullet points. If you spend some time on that website, you're going to probably know more about me than you ever wanted to know.
Okay. The other question
Jim,
I have is, did you give people your web address so they can make donations to you?
That's what I was just about to say. It's Jim Sinex, JIMSINEX.org. It's that simple. It's my name.
Say it.
.org.
Okay, say it twice.
JIMSINEX, no space, .org.
Good. Now, the other question I had is, there's a nonprofit in Tucson that's just getting their first location that does tiny houses and kind of a compound where there's water and bathroom facilities. And then the tiny houses are like one room or something, and it's has security, so it's safe. And so that might be the kind of thing you're looking for. But
yeah, so you've got right there, you've got a potential solution for those people who are temporarily houseless.
Yes, and I have known multiple people like that. They actually had jobs, but they couldn't afford the damn rent, and so they were homeless. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. So, my time in Prince William Forest Park in Virginia, my month there was very nice. I got to watch, autumn and, the turning of the leaves and all that stuff, but it can still be very debilitating. And so that has to be taken care of as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tracy has her hand up. Tracy, you get the last question.
Okay, my last question is, since you're all about voting fairness, what about ranked choice voting? I know that's not appropriate for the ward situation, but can you address that in general?
Well, actually it is. It is. So I'm in, you'll find, if you go to Tucson.com and type in my name, you're going to find about 20 years of writing. And about 20 years ago, I came out in favor of ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is a way of enhancing minority input while assuring a majority outcome. That simple. There are a couple other things you can gain with ranked choice voting as well. You don't need primaries. So consider this. You got Ward 5 down here. They've got 4 candidates. They don't have a Republican who's going to stand for election. So whoever wins the primary with 25% plus 1, as little as that, they're going to get the council seat. It seems that we should be doing that in November. I don't think there's any reason any of us can't choose our first choice, our second choice, our third choice. It's proven to work. It's proven also to enhance voter turnout. So that works. Here's another one. One of the arguments against the quote ward-only system is the Tom Volge argument. The Tom Volge argument is that a council member who wins a primary in their ward is required to think of the city at large, because they have to be elected at large. Now, I've mostly seen people use this as an excuse for not caring about what's going on in their ward. So I don't really buy into that. But you can use ranked choice voting in a thing called proportional representation. Proportional representation, you can eliminate wards completely, and you can run your elections using ranked choice voting only in November, and electing 3 people, and it doesn't matter where they come from. Now, my personal view is I think that geographically, again, populations, I think there is a difference between 1 and 5, 3 and 6, and 2 and 4. So I think geography is important. We could use that same sort of system, though, within a larger ward system. There's a lot that can be done to enhance our election system. And since we're Democrats, it's in our name, we just need to be better Democrats, and actually free think this. You know, there's no determination of exactly what has to happen. What we need is a democratic process to find out what our population at large, the Tucson population, is favoring, so we can put it up on a ballot.
Do you have an idea of why the Democratic Party did not endorse the ranked choice voting forward proposition we had on the ballot? Was it 140 or 141 last time?
Well, I'm supposing, but having advocated for ranked choice voting within the city of Tucson, within the National Education Association, I can tell you that people who are in power they like the rules that they were elected under. And so they tend, if someone comes to try to change the rules, they get real nervous. Okay. And what they do is they overcomplicate the situation. They say, see, it's so complicated, we're just going to vote against it. The reality is ranked choice voting is very, 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 very simple. I've taught it to freshmen in high school. So I know it can happen. Now the problem with the last ballot measure, I think it gave too much power to the state legislature. Elections are not about the elected; they're about the vote. And so that's one of the reasons I opposed it. Now the League of Women Voters, on the other hand, they opposed it because, well, I think it's fair to say that they are a my way or the highway group that favors proportional representation.
Yeah, I thought it was a start. I mean, it was a start. We could have massaged it later on.
Well, or we can write it properly. Starting in December, let's take a year to come up democratically with an idea of how to run elections better, shop it around to the other wards, make sure they're okay with it. Because the other thing we have to do is we have to make sure that the two council members in wards 2 and 4 feel comfortable with it as well, because they won't vote for it if they think they have a cushy operation going on.
Okay,
So is we can do that. It's called being liberal, which is, if you go back to the Greek, it just means free thinking.
Okay, well, let's hear it for Jim. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate a good presentation.
Hey everybody, it's Senator Mark Kelly. As all of you know, Arizona Democrats have had a lot of important wins over the last few years. We won 2 U.S. Senate races, and we delivered Arizona's electoral votes to President Biden and Vice President Harris. We elected Governor Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, and Attorney General Chris Mays. Now, those elections were close, and our victories mattered. Arizona Democrats from the federal to the local level have delivered real results for our state on critical issues like combating climate change, lowering prescription drug costs, protecting the right to vote, and preventing more restrictions on abortion access. The Democrats of Greater Tucson offers the opportunity to hear from elected officials and candidates about that important work and the issues that matter to them. That information will be invaluable as Arizonans head to the polls. So this election cycle, whether you're signing up to knock doors, make phone calls, or joining the Democrats of Greater Tucson to hear from and speak to Democrats in our area, please know that your voice matters and we need you on this team. Thank you.